If you're hearing this, stay away from the Weston House. No, seriously, stop whatever you're doing. Delete this audio and forget my name. I'm not saying that for dramatic effect. This isn't some Reddit creepypasta stunt or a drunk voicemail. I'm sitting in a dark kitchen with blood on my hands that isn't mine, and I can hear it moving in the walls again. I thought I'd have more time. God, I thought I could at least make it to the front door. But the thing doesn't hunt the way you think it would. It doesn't chase. It waits. It learns your footsteps, your heartbeats, the rhythm of your breathing. And then just, when you think you figured out where it's hiding, it's already behind you. There's a crack running across the ceiling, splitting like a spider. I keep staring at it because if I look away, I swear it moves. A few minutes ago, the kitchen clock fell off the wall without a sound. I didn't hear it hit the floor. I only noticed when the hands started ticking backward, sound of a distant thud. That's the back door. No, it can't be. I bolted it. I know I bolted it. You think haunted houses are about cold spots and flickering lights, right? You think you'd hear chains rattling or see some Victorian ghost lady drifting down the hallway. That's not this. The Weston House isn't haunted, it's alive. It's breathing. And if you're hearing this, you're already on its radar. I keep replaying the moment I stepped over the threshold, back when all I felt was smug amusement. A free weekend house-sitting gig. Easy money. The locals' warnings felt like campfire stories. Something to roll your eyes at. Now my heart is hammering so hard I can taste copper. Sound barely audible of a child's laughing, then abruptly cut. Don't pay attention to the laughter. It's not a child. It uses the voices of people you trust. The first time I heard it, it sounded like my little sister. She's been dead for 3 years. I don't know how long I've been recording. The lights keep flickering, and every time they come back on, the kitchen looks different. Cabinets shift position. The fridge door was on the left wall a second ago. Now it's on the right. The smell like damp earth. An iron keeps getting stronger. Sudden clatter. Whispering close to the mic. It's closer? Please. If you're even thinking about visiting this place, don't. Burn this message if you can. Delete every pin, every article, every whisper you've ever heard about Weston House. It doesn't want visitors. It wants participants. I can hear the front door creaking open by itself. The air is colder now, but my skin is burning. I can't tell if that's blood loss or fear. I'm trying not to breathe too loudly. The floorboards just groaned. Not under me. Behind me? Sound. Whispering stops. Silence stretches too long. Okay. I think no. No. It's right there. I can see its shadow stretching across the wall. But there's nothing casting it. It's long, thin, wrong. The angles don't line up with the furniture. Oh, God! It's smiling. It doesn't even have a face. But I feel the smile. If you're hearing this, stay away from the Weston House. Please. Door slams with unnatural force. Recording cuts. Darkness. It wasn't supposed to be like this. When I replay the chain of bad decisions that led me to the Weston House, the first link is embarrassingly mundane. I was broke, not the skip a latte kind of broke. Sell your childhood guitar and hope the landlord doesn't notice the late rent again kinda broke. My job at the copy shop had evaporated 2 months earlier when the owner pivoted to digital, which is rich coming from a guy who still used a flip phone. So when a coworker of a cousin of a friend mentioned a weekend house-sitting gig that paid cash under the table, my first thought wasn't about ghosts. It was great. Maybe I can buy groceries that aren't ramen. The fact that he prefaced it with, "It's haunted, by the way," barely registered. This is a world where people believe in flat earths and miracle detox. Tism always thinks something's haunted. I grew up on clickbait videos promising real ghost footage number 7 will shock you, and top 10 haunted houses that will make you cry. They're always a shaky camera, a blurry smudge, and some guy breathing heavily in the dark. Haunted houses are tourist traps with bad insulation. Still, the Weston House carried a different weight in local gossip. The small town of Greystone isn't even on most maps, so have to scroll and squint to find it. Ask the diner waitress about Weston House, and she suddenly remember an order in the kitchen. The guy at the gas station will mumble something about zoning permits and pretend his radio is too loud. It's like they're all reading from the same script. Don't ask. One evening, I scrolled through an old forum thread titled Greystone Oddities. Someone had posted a detailed timeline of the Weston family's disappearance 20 years ago. The next day, the entire thread was gone for 104 era. No cached copies. Nothing on the Wayback Machine. Even the local newspaper's digital archives had gaps, like someone had gone in with digital bleach. But that wasn't my problem, right? I needed cash, not conspiracies. When the contact texted me the address, I Googled it and found a single blurry photo. A perfectly normal, if slightly weather-beaten Victorian with a wraparound porch. The only unsettling thing was that none of the windows seemed to have curtains. I told myself that was just old house aesthetics. On the drive-in, the town greeted me with all the warmth of a wet handshake. A rusted welcome to Greystone sign leaned at an angle, bullet holes puckering the metal. The streets were too quiet for a Saturday afternoon. Even the stray dogs kept to the shadows. I passed a bar called The Last Stop. Someone had crossed out stop on the sign and replaced it with warning in red spray paint. I laughed, but it sounded hollow. The house itself looked perfectly fine when I pulled up. Sure. The paint peeled a little, and the porch steps creaked. But it wasn't the crumbling Gothic ruin you see in horror movies. The keys were under a loose floorboard by the door, just like the text had said. Inside, the air smelled like dust and lemon cleaner. There were framed photographs of landscapes on the walls, pleasant, generic stuff. No cobwebbed chandeliers or bloodstains on the carpet. My phone had 2 bars of reception, enough to stream a podcast about unsolved mysteries. I considered live tweeting the whole thing, maybe captioning it, spending the weekend in a haunted house. Pray for my Wi-Fi. But the truth was, I was mostly relieved. For the first time in months, I didn't have to think about bills or my ex's smug Instagram stories. Just me, a creaky old house, and easy money. There were little things, though. The thermostat read 68, but the air felt warmer in some rooms, colder in others. A family portrait hung in the hallway, but all the faces were turned slightly away from the camera, like they'd been caught mid-blink. The mailbox outside was crammed with flyers for a long-defunct carnival. As I unpacked my overnight bag, I told myself every old house had quirks. My grandmother's place used to whistle through the pipes at night. But when I went to plug in my phone, I noticed the outlet was already warm, like something had been drawing power even though the house was supposed to be empty. I shrugged it off, set an alarm for sunrise, and wandered from room to room, checking locks more out of habit than fear. Every latch clicked shut without resistance. The old boards under my feet groaned in a rhythm that almost sounded like breathing. But I'd had a long day, and paranoia isn't a luxury for the broke. I flicked off the living room light and climbed the stairs, pretending the darkness behind me didn't feel watchful. The silence was too perfect. The first night passed without incident, unless you count the house's habit of sighing like an old man every time the wind shifted. I chalked it up to wood settling, the way all old houses do, and buried myself in a podcast until sleep claimed me. But the second night was when things started to It began with a sound so small I almost convinced myself I'd dreamed it. A faint, deliberate tapping inside the wall behind my bed. 3 taps. A pause. 2 more, like a child trying to remember a knock-knock joke. I held my breath, waited, and when nothing followed, I let out a shaky laugh. Old pipes. Mice. Whatever. Morning sunlight always makes fear feel foolish. By noon, I'd decided I'd imagined the whole thing. I even joked aloud while making coffee. Dear Mr. Ghost, please don't knock while I'm asleep, it's rude. My own voice sounded too loud in the empty kitchen. That evening, though, I noticed the framed landscape photo in the hallway had shifted. It wasn't crooked, no. It had moved about 2 inches to the left, leaving a pale rectangle of unfaded wallpaper where it had hung for years. Maybe I'd bumped it, except I hadn't touched it. I told myself to stop being dramatic, but I couldn't shake the image of that pale rectangle like the house was quietly rearranging itself while I wasn't looking. On a grocery run, I asked the cashier, a gray-haired woman with half-moon glasses, if she knew anything about the Weston place. Her hand froze mid-scan over my milk. Walls, remember? She muttered. Her voice was so soft I wasn't sure I'd heard, right? Before I could ask what she meant, she shoved my receipt at me and called for the next customer. The phrase echoed in my mind all the way back. The walls remember. Remember what? That night, a low hum threaded through the house, so faint it blended with my own heartbeat. I followed it room to room, holding my phone flashlight like a talisman. In the kitchen, the hum stopped, then clear as day a soft creak upstairs. Though I'd just locked every window, I froze at the base of the stairs, every hair on my neck prickling. Hello. My voice sounded thin, like a bad recording. No answer, only another creak. This one farther down the hall, like something moving carefully to avoid detection. My rational brain scrambled for explanations. Old floorboards, temperature changes, but the sound had a cadence to it, almost intentional. By the time I climbed to the second floor, my heart was pounding so hard it drowned out everything else. The hallway stretched longer than I remembered, shadows pooling thick at the far end. I stepped carefully, willing myself not to bolt. Each step made the floor groan like a warning. In the guest room, everything looked normal except for the rocking chair. I hadn't noticed it before. It sat in the corner, perfectly still, but I had the distinct, nauseating feeling it had been moving a moment ago. "Get a grip," I whispered. The sound of my own voice felt like a mistake. Back in my room, I locked the door, not because I believed in haunted houses, I told myself, but because locks exist for a reason. I buried myself under the covers like a kid warding off nightmares. Sometime after midnight, a faint scritch-scritch drifted from inside the wall again. I put in my earbuds and blasted static noise. The next morning, the neighbor, an older man in a faded flannel shirt, was tending his overgrown yard. I approached him, trying to sound casual. "Hey, anything I should know about the Weston place? It creaks a lot." He didn't look at me. "If it's just creaks, you're lucky," he said. "Some of us hear worse." When I asked him what worse meant, he finally met my eyes. There was something raw there, some warning he didn't want to give voice to. Then he said, almost to himself, "Walls remember," and walked back inside, leaving his rake in the grass. That phrase was a splinter now, burrowing under my skin. Back inside, I tried to shake it off, but when I reached for my coffee mug, it wasn't where I'd left it. I eventually found it on the counter across the room, full of cold coffee I hadn't poured. By sunset, the house's silence felt less like peace and more like held breath. I decided an early night was the safest choice. I double-checked the locks. Drew the curtains, though. I could have sworn some of those windows had no curtains yesterday and slid under the covers, telling myself I'd laugh about all this later. Somewhere between waking and dreaming, a sound threaded through the darkness, high, thin, and unmistakable. A child's voice giggling upstairs. Except I was supposed to be alone. Greystone's library smelled like old paperbacks and mildew, the kind of place where time collects dust in the corners. The librarian, a woman with a cardigan older than me, looked startled when I asked for anything on the Weston family. She adjusted her glasses, opened her mouth, then closed it again. Finally, she pointed toward a microfilm reader in the back, like she was handing me a loaded gun and didn't want witnesses. The microfilm rolls crackled as I fed them through. Local news from 20 years ago was a parade of small-town mundanity pancake breakfasts, county fairs, weather advisories. But then, Tucked between a bake sale announcement and a high school football score was a headline, "Weston Family Missing Authorities Baffled." The article was short. A husband, wife, and their 2 children had vanished without a trace. The sheriff at the time, Martin Kell, was quoted saying, "The scene was unusual. No signs of forced entry, but significant structural anomalies." Structural anomalies. The clipping ended abruptly, as though the rest had been snipped off. I scanned forward. Looking for follow-ups, there were none. It was like the paper had decided the Westons had never existed. A week-old Reddit thread about Greystone popped into my head, one I'd found before it disappeared. The user had claimed the town council wipes anything related to Weston House. Conspiracy nuts. Eat that kind of thing for breakfast. But still, threads don't just vanish everywhere at once. On my lunch break, I wandered into a dive bar called Stag's End. It was the only place open before noon, which tells you everything about Greystone. The bartender, a wiry man with a crooked grin, poured my beer without asking what I wanted. When I mentioned Weston House, his hand froze on the tap. "Don't," he said. "Don't." What? No. I smirked, trying to mask the unease crawling up my spine. "Don't stay there. Don't ask questions. People who dig too deep." He shook his head and finally met my gaze. His eyes had the glassy sheen of someone who'd seen something and wished he hadn't. I pressed him anyway. "Come on! What's the worst you've heard?" He leaned in close enough for me to smell the whiskey on his breath. They weren't the first family that house took, just the first the papers bothered with. Then he straightened up, slammed my beer down, and walked away like I was already a ghost. I should have left it there. But curiosity and desperation are a potent mix. That night, I prowled conspiracy forums under my throwaway account. Threads flickered and vanished even as I refreshed, but I caught glimpses. Scanned police reports with whole paragraphs blacked out. One described non-Euclidean spatial distortion within the residence. Another mentioned ritual symbols etched into supporting beams. I couldn't stop staring at a grainy photo one user had posted before it was scrubbed. It showed a carved symbol somewhere between a spiral and an open eye burned deep into wood. The edges looked fresh, like it had been made yesterday. I saved it before the post vanished, then checked the support beams in the Weston House's basement stairwell with my phone flashlight. There it was. The same sigil, carved clean and deep. I didn't touch it. Something about it felt hungry. The local silence, the missing articles, The bartender's warning, they all started weaving together into a pattern. And patterns I'd learned from a story I told online last year. The one half of you in the comments said was fake. Always means something. Back then, you said I was embellishing, that I was chasing clicks. This one will make believers out of you. The next morning, I cornered the librarian again, feigning casual interest. Any idea why the paper has stopped reporting on the Westons? Her knuckles went white around the book she was shelving. Sometimes, she whispered, forgetting is safer. Safer for who? Driving back to the house, the town felt emptier than usual. Even the birds were silent. My phone buzzed once, an unknown number with a single message. Stop digging. When I tried to call back, the number didn't exist. Back inside the Weston House, the air was heavier, like the walls had been holding their breath. I scrolled through my saved photos of the sigil, comparing the curves and lines to the one carved into the beam. It was identical. My hands were trembling, though the room wasn't cold. I started pacing, muttering under my breath to no one, "What the hell happened to you, Wessons?" In the hallway, a framed photo of a foggy forest had fallen to the floor. The glass wasn't shattered, it had been removed cleanly, as if someone had carefully taken it apart, then placed it face beneath where it had hung was another pale rectangle on the wallpaper, but this one had something faint scrawled inside it. I leaned closer. It was a single word. Every old horror story has the same rule. Don't go into the basement. I could almost hear you all in the comments already. Don't do it, idiot. Believe me, I agreed. But the problem with fear is that it becomes unbearable if you leave it unanswered. I stood at the basement door for a long time, fingers hovering over the knob. My reflection in the glass panel of the door looked wrong, slightly delayed, like a badly synced video feed. I laughed, then a thin, nervous sound that didn't feel like it belonged to me. Fine, I'll look downstairs. What's the worst that could happen? The house was quiet too, quiet, like it was bracing itself for what I was about to do. Even the wind outside seemed to hold its breath. My hand hovered over the basement doorknob, slick with sweat. For a moment, I thought I saw it tremble on its own, just slightly, like something on the other side had nudged back. I told myself I'd be in and out, just a quick peek, enough to prove there was nothing but dusty shelves and a few spiders. The knob turned easily for a door that hadn't been opened in years. The hinges didn't even squeal. That felt wrong. Old doors are supposed to protest. The first rush of air from below hit me like a punch. Damp earth and rot. A smell so thick it coated my tongue. I gagged, covered my mouth with my sleeve, and clicked on my phone's flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing narrow wooden stairs that plunged into blackness. Each step creaked, but the sound was muffled, like the house was swallowing the noise. At the bottom, the floor was dirt, actual dirt, not concrete. My shoes sank slightly with every move, leaving clear prints. That's when I saw them. Footprints, small, bare ones, leading away from the stairs. Too small to be mine, too fresh to be old. The dirt around them was undisturbed, as if they'd appeared out of nowhere. The beam of my flashlight caught something in the far corner of a rocking chair, gently moving back and forth. No breeze. No one sitting in it. Just steady, deliberate motion, as if someone had risen moments before I arrived. I whispered, "Hello." My voice sounded swallowed, thin. The rocking chair stopped. Then, across the room, a faint cracalla sound like an old tape deck starting up. On a shelf near the wall, half buried under cobwebs, sat a battered tape recorder. The reels spun slowly, but instead of music or voices, only static hissed through the air. It was an oddly intimate sound, like someone breathing just behind my ear. "Who's there?" I tried to make my voice firm. It came out as a croak. The static faltered just for a heartbeat, and through the noise slipped a single word, soft and unmistakable. My name, drawn out, tender, almost affectionate. I froze. My name isn't exactly common. Hearing it in that basement felt like being touched on the spine with an icicle. The recorder stopped. The rocking chair began moving again, just slightly, like it was mocking me. Something about the far wall drew my attention. The beam of my flashlight revealed a heavy wooden door, half-rotten, but still bolted shut with an iron latch. The wood was gouged with deep scratches, as though something or someone had tried desperately to claw its way out. I reached out to touch the latch, and the metal burned cold against my fingertips. The door didn't budge. That should have been a relief. Instead, it felt worse, like the thing behind it wanted me to know it was there, and that the only reason I was still breathing was because it was letting me. The air grew heavier. My phone screen flickered. Even though I wasn't touching it, the battery percentage jumping wildly. Somewhere behind me, the tape recorder clicked back on for a single hiss before dying. Then the whisper came again, closer now. My name, repeated with a tone that was almost playful. I bolted for the stairs, my flashlight beam jerking wildly across dirt walls and footprints that seemed to multiply as I moved. Each step up groaned under my weight, but the groans seemed out of sync with my movement's echoes that came half a beat too late, as though something was following. When I reached the top, I slammed the door so hard the frame rattled. My laugh sharp. Too loud bounced off the hallway walls. "See, just a basement," I said to the empty air, my voice cracking on the last word. But long after I'd climbed into bed, the house stayed awake. Sometime past midnight, from directly above me, I heard it. The slow, deliberate creak of a rocking chair that shouldn't have been moving. Upstairs. I woke to the sound of a door slamming somewhere below, the kind of gut-punching crash that yanks you out of a dream and leaves your heart thundering. For a moment I thought it might have been the wind until another door slammed. This time upstairs, the house was playing pinball with its own doors, and I was the ball. When I flicked on the lamp, the bulb popped with a sharp crack and went dark. The rest of the room plunged into a hungry black. My phone flashlight cut a thin path through the gloom as I crept into the hallway. Every shadow seemed to breathe. The Weston House had always been too quiet. Now it was anything but. Floorboards groaned in rooms I wasn't in. Cabinets banged open and shut in the kitchen. Somewhere distant, glass shattered. I whispered to myself, "It's just settling. Old houses do that." But the lie tasted stale. Downstairs, the power flickered. For half a second, all the lights blazed too life too bright, buzzing like angry hornets, and in that flash, I saw it in the hallway mirror. A tall, thin figure, darker than the shadows, standing just behind me. Its arms were too long. Its head tilted at an impossible angle. Then the lights died, and the mirror showed only me. I stumbled backward, phone shaking in my hand, trying not to make a sound. My reflection seemed to lag for a heartbeat, like a bad video stream. Panic clawed at me, but habit kicked in. I dialed my friend Mark. It rang too many times before his groggy voice answered. Dude, it's 3A.M. You good? No, I whispered. There's something here. Doors are slamming. The lights. He laughed a tired, dismissive sound. You're spooking yourself. Old house, squeaky pipes. Wind. You watch too many horror flicks. I saw it, Mark. In the mirror. It wasn't me. Sure, man. You need sleep, or maybe lay off the creepy podcasts. I'm not joking. I think a slam upstairs cut me off, loud enough that Mark heard it. Okay? That was something, he admitted. Still, you're fine. Just ghosts of bad wiring. Call me in the morning. The line clicked dead before I could protest. The house settled into a tense, listening silence. That was when I realized the pattern. The doors only slammed when I wasn't looking. The figure only appeared in the reflection, never directly. And the one I'd been hearing faintly for days, stopped every time my eye swept a corner. It wasn't just hiding, it was waiting for me to blink. I moved cautiously toward the living room, trying to keep everything in sight at once. In the corner of my eye, something shafida, flicker, like a shadow skipping frames. I turned fast, but there was nothing. The mirror above the mantel caught a sliver of movement, a hand-long, bony fingers curling around the doorway behind me. But when I whipped around, the doorway was empty. You're going to think I imagined it. I get it half of you didn't believe the last story I posted. But pause. Yes, pause. The video, right here, and look at the frame behind me. You'll see it. You'll see the hand I missed. The air thickened, like the house was exhaling all at once. My phone screen dimmed, brightened, then displayed 3:33 a.m. Even though I knew it had been 3:21 moments earlier, the numbers pulsed, syncing with my heartbeat. I tried to retreat to the kitchen, but the doorway was suddenly wrong wider somehow. Its angles bent. For a split second, I glimpsed another hallway beyond it, unfamiliar and endless, stretching in a direction that shouldn't exist. Then it snapped back to normal. The hum resumed, louder this time, resonating through my teeth. I backed toward the stairs, refusing to look away from the mirrors. In one, I saw the figure standing perfectly still on the landing above me, its featureless face turned toward mine. But when I looked directly at the landing, it was empty. That's when I understood. It wanted to be seen, but only where it controlled the rules. It wanted witnesses. I crept up, step by deliberate step, flashlight trembling. The hall stretched on, Every door closed except one at the far end. A draft slithered past me, cold and deliberate, as if something had just moved through the walls themselves. I reached for my bedroom doorknob just to feel some sense of control when my eyes caught the hallway mirror again. The figure was no longer in the reflection. It was gone entirely. That absence was worse than seeing it. I turned the knob to retreat to safety, but the sound that met me wasn't safety at all. It was a slow, metallic click coming from the door at the end of the hall. The locked room wasn't locked anymore. The door creaked open with a sigh, like it had been waiting years for me. The air inside was colder, not the drafty kind of cold, but the marrow-deep chill you feel in nightmares. My flashlight beam skimmed the walls and caught on deep, violent grooved claw marks raked across every surface. Some slashed all the way through the plaster into the studs, exposing splintered wood-like bone. The floor was littered with scraps, brittle paper, shattered picture frames, a child's stuffed rabbit flattened and headless. The smell was worse than the basement-hold dust laced with something sour and metallic, like dried blood that never fully left. On the far wall, a single picture frame hung crooked. I straightened it before my brain processed what I was looking at. A Weston family portrait. 4 figures stood smiling on a summer lawn, except their faces had been carefully, viciously scratched out, not torn randomly scratched out, as if the image itself had offended something. In the corner, an overturned desk groaned under a pile of yellowed pages. I crouched and lifted the top sheet, a leather-bound journal with the Weston name embossed on the cover. The pages were brittle, words scrawled in frantic ink. The first entry I flipped to read: "It watches even when the mirrors are covered. We thought walls and locks would hold it. It bends time. Sometimes the sun rises twice. Sometimes the clocks run backward for hours." Another entry. "The neighbors know. The council told them to keep quiet. They fear the thing beneath more than they fear their consciences. We should have burned this place down." My stomach nodded. The bartender's warnings. The missing microphone. Even the librarian's pale face. They weren't myths or small-town paranoia. They were accomplices, keeping this house a quiet grave. I kept reading. "We carved the sigil again tonight." It hissed through the walls. "If you're reading this, don't trust the floor plan. It shifts when you're not looking. The door won't stay locked forever." The margins were dotted with symbols I didn't recognize, twisting spirals, jagged stars, shapes that seemed to wriggle if I stared too long. My fingers tingled just touching the paper, like static shocks leaping between us for a heartbeat. The room rippled. The claw marks seemed shallower, then deeper, as if the walls were remembering different versions of themselves. My phone buzzed once with no notification. When I checked the time, it read 3:12 a.m. BO. But I knew, with bone-deep certainty, that I'd been in the hallway at 3:28 a.m. I whispered to myself, "It's bending time." Hearing it out loud didn't help. Across the room, the flashlight beam brushed. Another carving letters gouged freshly into the plaster. Not the Weston's handwriting. Not faded. It was my name. I staggered backward, hitting the desk hard enough to rattle the journal. The rabbit's button eyes seemed to follow me as I moved. Somewhere, faint but clear, I heard a soft tapping 3 beats, A pause. 3 beats. Again. Morse code. A heartbeat. No. It was footsteps. Approaching but never arriving. I forced a laugh. The kind you use when you're standing on a cliff edge and someone says don't look down. Okay, I muttered. I get it. This is payback for all the stories I've told before. And yeah, if you followed my channel for a while, you probably remember the Ashwood Motel story. Half of you called it fate. The other half swore you saw something move in the still frames. This makes Ashwood look like a bedtime story. The journal slipped from my trembling hands and fell open to another page. The ink was smeared, but the words were legible. It wants witnesses. It feeds on attention. Every story told about it is a doorway. Every eye that looks makes it stronger. The overhead bulb flickered, buzzing like an angry insect. My own reflection in the glass of the picture frame was delayed again, a fraction of a second off. And for that fraction, I wasn't alone in the room. Something stood just behind me, its elongated fingers brushing my shoulder. I spun around empty air, but the claw marks seemed deeper now. From the journal's fallen page, another line caught my eye. If you see your name carved, it has already chosen you. The walls seemed to lean inward, the room shrinking. Somewhere outside the door, a low hum began deeper than before, vibrating the floorboards under my feet. My phone lit up again, flickering wildly. Camera app opening on its own. The screen displayed the room bud in the image. The family portraits' faces weren't scratched out anymore. They were smiling again. Except now, they were wearing my face. All 4 of them. The bulb overhead popped, showering sparks. Darkness swallowed the room except for my quivering flashlight beam. The journal pages fluttered in a wind I couldn't feel on my skin. Something whispered from everywhere at once, a chorus layered over itself. My name, then laughter, then silence so sudden it hurt. I bolted for the door, gripping the knob with sweaty hands. Behind me, something scraped along the wall, etching new grooves even as I fled. As I yanked the door shut, the final flash of light from my phone screen caught the carving of my name again. It wasn't alone anymore. Below it, freshly gouged, were 3 words that hadn't been there a second earlier. I am here. Then the lights throughout the Weston House exploded. One after another, a chain of gunshot cracks in the darkness. Glass rained down like glittering ash. I didn't look back. I didn't have to. The chaos behind me was proof enough. I wasn't alone in that room, and I wasn't the first to learn the Westons hadn't just disappeared. I ran. The Weston House was alive. Now no more pretending. The walls pulsed faintly, as if breathing. Every surface groaned like distant thunder beneath skin. I sprinted through the hallway. Journal clutched tight. The sigil burned into my mind like an afterimage. Doors no longer led where they should. The kitchen doorway spat me out into the upstairs hallway. The bathroom door opened into a room lined with mirrors, each reflecting a slightly different version of me, some with hollow eyes, some grinning when I wasn't. One reflection stayed still even after I moved on. The whisper started as a single voice, my name but fractured into dozens. Male, female, childlike, all overlapping in a nauseating chorus. They didn't echo, they anticipated. The voices spoke my thoughts half a second before I had them. My phone vibrated in my pocket with a phantom notification. When I pulled it out, the screen showed a live video feed of me running, except the angle was impossible, like the house itself was filming. Comments flickered across the screen in a language I didn't recognize. I crashed into a door and found myself in the basement again. The rocking chair moved violently now, slamming into the dirt floor like it wanted to escape. The locked door, the one that had held for decades, was open wide, revealing only blackness deeper than the basement walls should allow. Something stirred inside, scraping softly, like claws over bone. A shape flickered at the edge of my vision, a tangle of two long limbs, and a head that kept bending, searching for the angle that would hurt most to see. No, no, no. My voice broke. I stumbled backward, my heel catching on the dirt. The journal spilled open to the page with the sigil. Desperation trumped reason. I jammed my finger into the dust and copied the spiral pattern onto the floor, drawing fast, praying I remembered it right. The whispers sharpened, voices hissing. Wrong, wrong, wrong. I closed the spiral, completing the mark. The air shuddered like the whole house had inhaled sharply. For a hot beat, the world stilled. Then every door in the basement slammed at once. The rocking chair froze mid-swing. The whispers stopped, silence complete. Crushing silence filled the room. I dared a breath. Did that work? The wall behind me shifted with a sickening wet sound. The plaster bulged outward, forming the faint outline of fingers pressing through. The sigil glowed faintly, then dimmed as if the thing had simply stepped around it. The walls rippled like disturbed water. A doorway appeared where none had been before'n. Open arch framed by claw marks. Beyond it, I saw my childhood bedroom, exactly as I'd left it years ago. The Star Wars poster, the cracked nightlight. My mother's voice drifted through. Honey, it's okay. Come home. Bitterness had been my armor up until then at the Westons, at this town, at the universe for its cruel jokes. But regret flooded in now. Regret for taking the job, for ignoring the whisper, for every smug comment I'd ever left on stories like this, thinking I was smarter. The voice shifted mid-sentence into the bartender's drawl. Shoulda listened. Kid. Then into Mark's sleepy laugh. You're fine, man. Finally, into my own voice, mocking. Just ghosts of bad wiring. I backed away, tears stinging my eyes. You don't get to use their voices. The house didn't answer, didn't need to. The hallway behind me twisted, bending into a loop so that no matter how far I ran, I kept passing the same fallen family portrait, its faces flickering between the Westons and me. A surge of anger, hot and stupid, pushed through my fear. I spun and slammed my palm against the sigil on the floor, shouting, You wanted a witness. Fine. Watch this. The walls convulsed. For a second, the house folded inward, corridors collapsing like lungs exhaling. A deafening crack split the air. The archway dissolved into splinters of shadow, and just like that, the air cleared. The doors were back where they belonged. The kitchen led to the kitchen again. The lights flickered on, steady and warm, like a kindly host making amends after a fight. I staggered to the front door and found it unlocked, wide open to the cool pre-dawn air. Outside, the world looked painfully normal. Dew on the grass, the horizon bleeding pale orange. Too easy. I stepped onto the porch, half expecting the boards to turn to teeth beneath my feet. But they stayed wood. The birds started singing. My phone displayed the right time. I walked down the gravel driveway, each step both lighter and heavier than the last. At the edge of the property, I looked back. The Weston House sat perfectly still, its windows blank and harmless. A house? Again. Nothing more. A laugh soft and genuine escaped me, but it sounded wrong, like it belonged to someone else. My phone buzzed once. No notification. Just a buzz. The sunrise was beautiful. The kind of ordinary beauty you'd miss if you didn't know what could lurk in the walls. But even as the light warmed my face, I couldn't shake the sensation that the house hadn't been defeated. It had let me go. And somewhere, just beyond the tree line, a shadow shifted long arms, bending at an impossible angle, as if testing how far outside the house its reach could go. The world faded into quiet, calm, and almost safety. Until the screen wobbles as I prop my phone on the dashboard. My face is pale, smeared with dirt and streaks of dried blood. The sky outside the car window is already bruising purple, even though it should still be dawn. The distortion in the video makes my movements lag a fraction of a second behind themselves, like reality's buffering. If you're hearing this, my voice cracks, then steadies into a rasp. Stay away from the Weston House. The words echo the cold open, but now they sound like surrender, not panic. A faint hiss rides under my speech static or whispering breath. I thought it was haunted. That's what they said? I forced a laugh that dies halfway. It's not haunted. It's alive. The walls? The walls are skinned. The doors are mouths. And when you look away, when you stop looking, it moves. For a moment, I glance out the window. Behind me, through the glass, the horizon seems to bend. Trees twitch minutely, even though the wind has stopped. I ran. You saw me run. My voice is bitter, almost mocking myself. But I think running isn't escape. I think it let me go. I lift the journal to the camera. The pages now blank. The ink vanished like it was never written. Only a faint impression of claw marks remains. I flipped through quickly to prove it, page after page of nothing. See? It keeps its secrets. Even proof won't hold. A flicker crosses the screen, just a frame. Easy to miss. Something long-limbed and dark passes the back window. I don't notice, but the audience does. I lean closer to the camera, eyes wild but eerily calm. Listen, this video, it's not just a warning. It's a test. If you're watching this, you're part of it now. That's what the journal meant. Every story told about it is a doorway. Every eye that sees feeds it. My voice distorts on feeds. the syllables stretching too long, like the recording itself doesn't want to let it go. You think I'm exaggerating. I used to think that too. Remember Ashwood Motel? Half of you joked I was just farming clicks. I let out a weak chuckle. Click all you want, just comment. If you saw it move behind me, tell me if you catch the frame I missed. Maybe if enough of you look, it'll stay with me and leave you alone. The air inside the car grows denser. The windshield fogs. But I haven't been breathing hard. My breath goes white in the cold that shouldn't exist. I tried drawing the sigil again. I whisper, holding up a crumpled napkin with the spiral scrawled on it. The lines warp on camera, twisting subtly between frames. But the lines won't stay straight anymore. Like it's rewriting them. Outside, a lone bird cries, out cut off. Mid-note, as if something swallowed the sound. I swallow hard. My voice softens, almost tender. If I don't make it, maybe one of you will. Maybe someone will figure out what it wants. A pause. But I don't think that's the point. I think it wants witnesses. It wants to be everywhere. Maybe by clicking play, you just opened the door wider. For a long beat, I just sit there, staring into the lens. The hiss under the audio grows louder, a low hum that seems to vibrate through speakers. Behind me, the faintest ripple distorts the car's headrest as, if invisible fingers are pressing from the other side, the camera stutters. My image flickers between frames. Me in the car. Me in the room with claw marks. Me standing in front of Weston House again, all overlaid for a blink. Then I lean forward, voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur. You're next. Silence swallows the recording. No ambient sound. No wind. Just nothing. 10 seconds pass. 20. Viewers might start to think the video's over. Then barely audible a faint, deliberate knock sounds from somewhere off camera. Another pause. A soft whisper snakes through the static, shaped just enough like a name that every listener swears it's their own.